Back in 1998, I had one of my first life-threatening experiences. And that is when I had a rupture in my lower colon. And at the time, I didn't realize that that severe pain was a serious. Now, you would think with a medical degree and a husband who was a physician that I would certainly pay heed to that kind of pain. But instead, I thought, no, I'm going to use all the things that the Lord has taught me in how to relax my body, how to use my mind, that I would diminish my perception of pain. But in doing so, of course, I was allowing my body to develop a very life-threatening peritonitis. There was a lot of bleeding, and of course, contents of my colon were spilling rapidly into my abdomen. By the time I actually made it down to the emergency room, I was nearly unconscious. And in the sampler, I actually opened that book with that experience. And that was one of where I could feel myself losing life itself. But I had the most remarkable sense of peace. And it was in that moment that I recognized death is not to be feared, particularly when you know into whose arms that you will be going. But the peace that I felt was so great that I wanted to go. But then I felt a most unusual sensation in my left hand, and it felt like I was holding on to two warm or hot tubes of some kind. And it was the only sensation I had left in my body. I mean, I actually had no other feeling other than that of joy and peace, and I had no pain. And then I remembered reaching a certain level of consciousness, which allowed me to look over to my left. And it was my husband, whose ER, that was the emergency room he worked in, who could do nothing except look across my body at the man who was in charge of the ER that day to save my life. And I could just barely visualize and understand the look on his face. And it was in that moment that I felt the Lord saying, you go back. You go back to this marriage. And you go back to this life. And you bring me glory because of it. And the next thing I knew, as the physician was trying to insert an IV, because all of my veins had collapsed, he was attempting to place an IV in the clavicle area, which if he missed would cause a puncture of my right lung. And I remember then his hands shaking, and with very little breath left, after I realized I wanted to stay, I remember whispering, and I don't know how I had the energy. I can only believe that it was the Lord's breath. But in my saying to this surgeon, it's okay. You can find the vein. We remember everything in medical school, and that was the last thing I remember saying until a surge of the most profound pain I had ever experienced returned. He had found the vein, and there was life-saving fluid that was now running through my veins. And the rest you can read about in the book if you're interested.